for family members because they don't understand, firstly, what's going on in the brain, because their loved one looks the same as they've always looked, but the communication piece becomes a challenge. So our objectives tonight when we do this presentation is that at the end of the presentation that you actually understand how dementia affects a person's ability to communicate, because it does affect that, and to understand the basic unspoken language of dementia. So maybe looking at their body language and what they're saying because they're not saying it verbally. And then we're going to learn how to communicate with the person suffering from dementia, because sadly with the stigma, many people just don't come by anymore, and that's not necessarily good either. So a quick recap, what exactly is dementia? So dementia is a very broad term for lots of things that are coming together at the same time in a person's brain, and it does affect their memory and their communication and basically their thinking. How do they process things, and the speed is different to, we'll say, yourself or myself that's cognitively fine. So Alzheimer's disease is a very specific type of dementia. And I'm sure if I said to you, if you have any friends that have dementia, many of your friends might say, well, they have dementia or they have Alzheimer's or they have both. There's quite a bit of confusion around that piece. So for the purposes of those that are joining us tonight, let's just explain that Alzheimer's disease is an irreversible progression of the brain disease that destroys your memory, your thinking ability, and your ability to carry out possibly basic tasks. Alzheimer's in all of the dementias is the most common form of dementia, and it is a specific disease. So if you look at this umbrella here, you'll see that dementia in general is a very broad term. And when a person has Alzheimer's, they in actual fact do have a form of dementia. However, if you have dementia, it does not necessarily mean you have Alzheimer's. So think of the broad term, think of the umbrella term being dementia, and Alzheimer's carries 65% of that diagnosis. But there are other dementias as well, and you can see them underneath the umbrella there, such as frontal temporal dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, vascular dementia. There's other types of dementia, but the Alzheimer's dementia typically is the most common. And that's what you need to think about unless your loved one has had significant tests done to say that they have something different. So let's look quickly at the warning signs of dementia. There are basically 10. There's the short, supple changes that you see over time, difficulty finding maybe the right words, changes in mood, apathy, which is really kind of no interest in anything, couldn't be bothered type attitude, difficulty completing things that you could normally do, confusion about time and place and possibly who's the president and what season it is, difficulty following a storyline, a failing sense of direction, which sadly we see a lot when people are out driving and they get lost, maybe repeating themselves over and over again and struggling to keep up and adapt to changes. So how does this disease really affect their communication? Well, it does affect their communication significantly, and that's because not all of their brain is dying at the same time, but different parts are dying off that affect different areas. So think of this like connections or a bridge from one country to another, and the bridge breaks. Well, therefore, how do you go from one side to the other? That connection in the middle is broken. And a person with dementia may not even be able to remember or recognize simple everyday things such as dates and times, places, and or the season. And this is what happens sometimes when you see somebody that's maybe outside that is dressed not properly for the season. Like, for example, a woman that sadly you may see walking down the road in the depths of winter and she's in her nightrobe. That would be an indication that definitely there's something going on. So as a person's ability to process information deteriorates, over time, it can lead to delayed responses to questions. And eventually they may have trouble adequately communicating and comprehending their thoughts and their own ideas. Speech, for example, comprehension, their hearing and their vision, and physical sensation deficiencies can all be responsible for communication problems. Now let's go back a little bit so that you understand the different phases that dementia takes. Most people, or should I say in general, somebody could have this disease for possibly 2 to 3 years before it's even noticed by family members. Typically, there are 3 stages, and I want you not to be bothered by knowing these stages, but generally speaking, it's like a story that you would read to your children. There's the beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. Some people call it the early, the middle, and the late. Other people call it the mild, the moderate, and the severe. Don't worry about, what stage a person is in, but just know that typically there are 3 stages. So let's examine what happens, in the very early stages. Your loved one may suffer from dementia in the early stages, might be capable of a life that is self-sufficient. They possibly can still have meaningful conversations and participate in social activities. However, they will encounter memory lapses, such as not recalling familiar words or location of everyday objects. Early dementia symptoms are often overlooked due to their gradual nature. And sadly, many families in this stage are not necessarily in denial, but they think, well, mom's old or dad's not as sharp as he used to be, and he's a little bit older and it's a senior moment. So you have to be very clear what you're looking for, and you certainly have to look for patterns because it may not be dementia and it could be a senior moment. And let's face it, we all have those sometimes too. So let's see what happens in this first stage. Okay, so what would those symptoms possibly be? Well, there may be difficulty finding the right word or the right name. There may be difficulty performing simple everyday tasks. What about forgetting something that they just read, or possibly a phone conversation with somebody that they just had? What about frequently losing or misplacing things? Now, I don't want you to be worried about that right there, because a lot of times we lose things on a daily basis. But the difference here is, do we have the ability to go back and remember where we left our phone or where we left our keys? That's the most important piece. If you can't remember, then that means something is going on. How about planning and organizing is becoming increasingly challenging? And how about the uncharacteristically poor judgment when making decisions? That's a big one. So communication in the early stages does affect people with dementia differently, and it depends on the person for lots of different reasons. Don't ever exclude your loved one, even if they've had a formal diagnosis of some form of Alzheimer's. Don't ever exclude them from conversation, because they're still a person and they still have feelings. That does not ever go away through their disease state. So consider understanding and taking time to really listen to what the person is trying to say. And I know that time is our biggest asset, but we have to be patient, which is really hard when somebody keeps repeating themselves or is taking forever to say something. Do not interrupt the person unless you think that they need assistance finding the word, and they won't be bothered that you're helping them to say whatever it is that they need to say. Ask the person that you're dealing with, are they still comfortable with the amount of help that you're willing to give them? And it's important to be very honest and transparent about your feelings too with them. In the middle stage, which again, typically can be probably year 3 to year 5. In this stage, you might notice that they're making very frequent mistakes. They're very frustrated, and in actual fact, they're getting angry. The brain damage at this stage can impair the person's ability to express themselves properly. And this is where challenging behaviors kind of surface, because it's a frustration thing that they can't make themselves understood. And the symptoms of the disease become clearer and clearer because it's very restrictive to what they can do. Some of these symptoms may be forgetting recent events. For example, you may go out to dinner with your friends that you've known for 40 years, and maybe your spouse doesn't remember that they went out to lunch yesterday. Could be possibly not remembering your grandchildren's names. And sadly, sometimes it's where they may not even remember your name or the fact that they're even married to you. They may have increased difficulty with communication, and they will require personal assistance on a daily basis. You'll see that possibly their personality is changing. They're not the person that they used to be. And there could be some paranoia and compulsive repetitive behaviors like hand wringing. And hand wringing is like where they're fidgeting all the time with their hands. It could be maybe where they have a towel and they're constantly twisting it. But that in itself is an expression where they're frustrated or they're anxious. And that in itself is a form of communicating. And then, of course, we have the risk of getting lost when wandering. So how do you communicate with your loved one if you're in this second phase? Because now it's more challenging than it was in the first stage, right? So you do have to engage the person in one-to-one conversation. And in these situations, because their ability to communicate is so challenged, you have to take away all the extra stimulus that's around them. So for example, you're going to be more frustrated if the television's on and you're trying to explain something to a person that has a form of dementia. Or if there's multiple people in the room, you need to take that stimulus away so that you have their focus so they can actually try and understand what exactly is it that you want them to do or reply to. You have to speak slowly and clearly, but by this point, I don't mean speaking to them like a baby where your speech is slowed down, because they can sense that too. You want to speak to them in a dignified manner, like they're an adult, but you want to keep what you're asking them simple. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Keep your eye contact. This indicates that you really do care what you're saying. I always remember that my mom told me that you look people straight or square in the eye because the eyes are the windows of the soul. So you need to think about that, because if you're looking somewhere else and you're talking to them, they already know that you're not really focused on what they're saying. So a simple thing like that will most definitely get them engaged. And again, think about maybe your grandchildren or your own children when they were babies. When you wanted to let them know that you wanted their focus, what did you do? You probably took them by the arms and you probably knelt down to their level and you had their focus to say what you wanted them to do. So the same process here is really important when you're speaking to somebody who has a form of dementia, that you're giving them your total attention. Reassuring a person is really, really important, and you have to encourage him or her to elaborate their thoughts. And this, again, takes time, because you cannot force somebody to rush when they have a form of dementia, because it's taking their processing much longer to think, which means that you have to have the patience of a saint to stand there, because their response might take 30 or 40 seconds. And that's really hard for the person who's cognitively fine, because we need to go about our day and do stuff, right? But it is really important. And by not doing this, you're actually going to frustrate the person even more, which will cause more communication challenges later on. And encourage your loved one by maybe giving visual cues. And you could, maybe join hands to say we're going out for a walk, or whatever it is. If you want them to pray, or if you want them to come with you, use your visual cues as well. So late stage dementia is stage 3. This is basically probably anywhere from 7 to 12 years in, if indeed the client lasts that long. Some people pass away with different types of dementia during a shorter span, but Alzheimer's, even though it's the most prevalent, a lot of people live successfully from anywhere from 0 to 15, 16, 17, and sometimes 20 years. In the late stages, the signs and the symptoms of memory disturbance become more apparent, of course, as the disease progresses, because more and more of their brain is dying over time, which means their ability to do things for themselves is diminishing. They lose the ability to interact in the world in general, and they have no ability to hold a conversation or control their muscles, sadly. The cognitive skills and the memory continue to deteriorate, and you may notice significant personality changes to basically where they digress into themselves. And it's almost like lights out, nobody home, but you're still seeing the person in front of you, and we still have to perform the activities of daily living with them every day. These symptoms would include not being able to recognize their family members and friends, becoming increasingly dependent on you as the caregiver. They have no awareness of recent experiences or indeed their surroundings, and their physical ability and gradual progressively is lost, such as walking, sitting, and swallowing, and then experiencing behavior changes that could result in aggression. Now, I certainly, in my experience, haven't seen a lot of folks in stage 3 to be aggressive, because they're usually more passive at that stage and sleeping a lot and not physical activity every day. So again, it depends on the person and it depends on their personality. So therefore, how do you communicate with somebody in late stage when they can't communicate with you anymore? So back to the basics, you have to identify yourself first. And I don't mean identify yourself as in, hi, I'm Aishling, I'm your daughter, I'm your youngest, I'm your baby. Too much information. Hi, I'm Aishling and I'm here to take care of you. So front facing, eye contact and down to their level. Consider using, again, some nonverbal communication. So if you don't understand what they're trying to say, if indeed they can even speak in this stage, use your gestures. So for those that haven't been on these series before, my mom had dementia for 7 years, and sadly, maybe I think it was year 5 or 6, she didn't know my name. She knew that I was family, but she didn't know that I was her youngest daughter and I was her baby, and she certainly didn't remember my name. So that didn't become important to me. What became important to me was that she knew I was there for her. So I would just give her a hug and I'd say, Mom, I love you. And that gesture of putting your arms around somebody and embracing them sometimes speaks more than the words that you speak on a regular basis. So please make sure that you do have that physical contact, because every human being, they need that. Take a moment to consider the emotions behind the words or sound that your loved one is making or what you're hearing, okay? Sometimes these emotions being expressed are more important than what is said. So if your loved one, for whatever reason, is grunting or grimacing, don't ignore that, because that possibly means that they are in pain. And that's where you need to read their body language. You need to treat your person, your loved one, your spouse with the utmost of dignity and respect, and never speak down to them or talk over them or about them when they're in the room, because there's probably nothing wrong with their hearing. And that's really important, that they are respected, even if you're talking to your son or your daughter about challenges that you've had with them throughout the week. Please be cognizant of that, because the feelings really do hurt them. And even if you don't know what to say, you don't have to speak, but again, just being there and holding somebody's hand, giving them a hug, or even just being around them and making light conversation that's simple is a form of communication as well. So let's look at the factors that make up, the messages that we do in actual fact communicate. So what about body language, right? The tone and the pitch of your voice and the words that we use are super important. And certainly in stage 2 and stage 3, this becomes more and more important. So if your mom or your dad or your spouse can't actually say, hi, how are you? You can just give a beautiful smile and wave at them, and they know, wow. And they may even wave back, but they see the smile, they see your eyes, and that in itself sets the tone for the day. Having a little caring attitude. So even though people may not understand what's being said, They certainly can retain their feelings of emotion, and it's important to always maintain their dignity and their self-esteem. It's about helping them feel that they're still important. Doesn't matter if they can't speak back, they're still a person and they're still there. And we need to recognize that. So give yourself plenty of time, and you have to be flexible. I'll also share with you that if you don't know how to laugh, and think of this sometimes as it is a challenge, but you have to look on the lighter side of it as opposed to the negative side of it, because it's a very serious disease. It's a very challenging disease. And you, as the caregiver, the provider of care, whether you're the daughter, the son, the niece, the nephew, you have to bring laughter and joy into it. And you even have to laugh not at them, but with them, because if you don't, you will cry, because it's tough. It's really, really tough. So try and find laughter sometimes at what you're doing to make your day and their day more enjoyable. And wherever it's appropriate, keep the person's attention by possibly using touch. And when I say touch, I don't necessarily mean what I had shared with you about hugging and stuff like that. Some people love to have a little hand massage, or maybe they like to have their shoulders rubbed, or maybe their hair rubbed. The touch is super, super important. Of course, dependent on who that person was. Some people don't like to be touched, so you need to know that. But if communication is gone and the words are gone, the hugging, the rubbing of the hands, or even holding the hands is really, really important. Human to human touch. So let's talk about, how do you talk to this person, okay? So speaking in a very gentle tone and a calm tone is really important. Now, there's a difference between speaking calmly like I'm speaking now, or as opposed to speaking really, really fast because you want to say something and you have to get it all in. When you talk rushed and you talk fast, you stress the person you're talking to out. So you need to be very mindful of that. And you also need to be mindful if you're speaking too slow, because it's almost like they're an idiot, and they're not. They just are trying to comprehend at a slower pace. So keep it simple, keep it monotoned but exciting at the same time, and focus on one thing at a time. So what does that mean, Aishling? How do you do all this? So just for example, if you were a daughter who was making mom dinner, and mom can't really communicate anymore, but you know your mom loves her food, right? You're not going to say to your mom, Mom, would you like a taco or would you like salmon? How about we have a steak? Mom, would you like spaghetti? Too many choices. So the communication becomes very focused, and you say, Mom, I know you love pasta and I know you like salmon. Which would you like tonight? Salmon or fish? And that's going to help her say one or the other. So she feels a little bit dignified and she's respected because she's being given a choice. Ensure again that you give enough time for you to understand them and enough time for them to try and interpret what you're saying. Body language is huge. And I cannot express, if I had one thing to leave with tonight, I want to say to you that you need to be mindful of your body language. What you're saying and what you're showing are two different things. And people with dementia, funnily enough, can read your body language like a sponge. In other words, they soak it all in. So if your words aren't matching your body language, you have a problem on your hands, okay? So make yourself understood by using your hand gestures and simple expressions, okay? Back to the basics, keep it simple. Pointing and demonstrating is helpful. Keeping their attention and showing them that you care may also make them feel comfortable. And you could do that by even touching their hand, or if you want them to come with you, you can use your hands like I'm doing now to say, come with me, or put your hand out like this as if you're going for a walk to where they're going to link your hand to go with you. Sharing laughter and a warm smile, again, can convey more words than you're ever trying to say, because actually a smile is international. No matter what country you've traveled to, everybody knows when somebody smiles that they're a warm and possibly friendly human being. So the environment is also really important. Like I had said, extra stimulus for people who have dementia is not good. Now, I don't have a sound system here to share with you, but there's a lot of buzz kind of going on in a person's head when they have a form of dementia. Think about even if somebody had maybe a hearing aid that's too high or too low, or the battery's going. If they don't have any sort of decline in their hearing, think about just the sounds in general. A fan that may be on, a television in the background, maybe an air conditioner window unit, maybe somebody cutting the grass because the window's open. They are all extra stimulus that you need to dissipate so that you can focus directly with the person that you're trying to communicate. I can share with you that routine is key, and routine can definitely reduces any sort of confusion and can actually improve communication if you can help your loved one get into a routine. You have to keep everything you're doing consistent because they're going to learn by patterns, most especially if they can't communicate verbally. And it saves confusion for the person with dementia if everyone uses the same tone of voice. Keep that in mind. There's a lady called Naomi Feil, Feil, and if you have a chance over the weekend or in the coming months, I would suggest you go and Google her. It's Naomi Feil, Feil. And Naomi is famous for the validation therapy that she uses. And for those that have never heard of her or don't know the work that she does, yes, her work takes a long time for her to come through. However, she does come through, and she comes through with people by validating and recognizing the challenges that they're going through. And make no mistake about it, I'm not a doctor. I'm very experienced, and I think that I would nearly be an expert on this topic doing what I'm doing for as long as I'm doing. And people that have dementia need to feel validated. Sadly, oftentimes the communication issues are caused by us ourselves because we think we understand what they need, but we're not really looking at all of the pieces like the body language, like the history of have they eaten, are they in pain, are their body showing any signs of pain, have they slept? They are all signs of communication. And if we miss them, sadly, it can cause big challenges for us as the caregivers. So empathy is huge, and developing trust. A person with dementia has to know that they trust you. And when they trust you, there's that sense of security. This in turn will reduce their anxiety. And when you can reduce the anxiety, that leads to better communication. So validation is an example of where a family and a carer might not argue with their mom or their dad or whoever it is that has dementia. That's a key, and I want you to write it down. It doesn't matter how much you know you're right, you can never and will never win an argument with somebody who has a form of dementia because you are dealing with 100% cognitive intelligence and they're not. So you're dealing with somebody who has a broken brain. So therefore you're not going to win. So don't try to win. And if you do try to win, you're going to actually upset yourself and cause major communication barriers. So music also is a great way of communicating. Now, the music piece only works if they liked music when they didn't have dementia. It's not necessarily going to work now because they have dementia. But if you know your loved one really, really well, whether it's your spouse or your aunt or your sister, if she or he liked music before, that music can be used as a way of relaxing and calming, and in a sense, giving you a little bit of respite if you're the caregiver that's with them every day. A certain piece of music can actually unlock memories and feelings, and that can actually lead to conversation. And it's important to be prepared to respond to the release of feelings because I'll be honest, I listen to songs sometimes that make me happy, but sometimes they can make me cry if I have a memory that's locked in my mind that leads to perhaps a sad memory. For example, Amazing Grace. I always think of funerals when people die, and sadly, we had that song at my own parents' funeral. So when I hear that song today, even if I'm in good humor, it makes me cry. So you have to be prepared for the communication that's relative to the music that you're playing. And guess what? Even if they do cry, that's a form of communication that needs to be allowed to come out as well, because they're trying to communicate sadness, and that has to be worked through their body too. So understanding a person's musical likes and dislikes is crucial for the approach to be successful. Music can be used in formal therapy or directly just for enjoyment. And it's interesting, I was actually at a funeral this morning of an 89-year-old that loved to dance with his wife. He did not die of dementia or anything like that, but I did think it was so interesting in the eulogy today that this man had 10 children. And his son got up and spoke today and said that his dad and his mother just loved dancing. And once or twice as kids, they remember that the two of them would just go hand in hand and arms around each other in the kitchen, and they would dance for 10 minutes in the chaos and the activity that was around them with their 10 kids, but it was like their moment. So it's interesting that even in that scenario that people can be taken away with a beautiful song that they like, and they can dance around the kitchen even though all hell is breaking loose in the house. So the same is true with somebody who has dementia. If you are a loved one who's trying to manage somebody with dementia constantly without a lot of help, I would absolutely encourage you to get an iPod, or to get one of the CD players that you can play tunes that meant a lot to them. And actually, you've created now a little bit of respite for yourself, where your loved one will really sink into that and go back in time and actually have a nice time, and possibly even a rest, which will give you rest too. You hear today of this reminiscent therapy, creating books or going back and recalling past events. This is amazing therapy as well. So for those that are on tonight that don't really understand what happens in dementia, your short-term memory, it goes. So I could have a cup of coffee now, and a half an hour later I could say, could I have another cup of coffee? And a half an hour after that, I'll say, can I have another cup of coffee? Because I don't remember that I've had 2 cups of coffee already. However, in dementia, the brain goes back further and further in time. And for whatever reason, it locks into a time when you feel most secure when you were growing up, assuming that you had a stable childhood or teenhood with your parents. And it locks into that secure place and time, which is why a lot of people say, I want to go home, I want to go home. They don't mean necessarily that they want to go to their home where they lived, but they want to go back to that place where they had that secure feeling of love, carefree, no responsibility, and everything was taken care of for them. So reminiscing is really, really important. And I would suggest that if you have somebody who has a form of dementia, again, take out all the extra stuff, but pull out those maybe wedding photographs, or maybe your first house photographs, or their parent photographs, maybe the boat or the tractor, or things that were important to them. Maybe they caught their first maybe sea bass if they were a fisherman. And you can keep bringing out these photos every day and reminiscing and talking about what's in the picture. Now, you might think, well, that sounds really babyish and you're doing the same thing over and over again. But remember that you're cognitively 100% and they're not. So they don't remember Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that you already did that on Monday. Okay, so you use those simple things and you keep bringing them out every day for them to reminisce, and they take a little trip down memory lane. And it's very positive for them, and it's very rewarding activity for you and or who the caregiver or whoever is helping you with your loved one. And even if they can't participate verbally, reminiscing and sharing memories with others can be very enjoyable. and may allow them a little bit of time to distract themselves. And again, if that emotion comes out or a little bit of sadness, that's okay. So look back on the past. It can provide a sense of peace for many of us, and happiness can also cause us to recall some painful memories. And whenever this happens, it's important to be sensitive to the person's reaction. Don't say to somebody, oh, don't cry. Again, I talk about today this funeral that I was at for this beautiful man with 10 children, and the priest said, today is a day that you are allowed to cry because you're celebrating the life and you're crying for yourself of what you're going to miss because your dad is gone. And that's true when people reminisce. There's a piece of them that's sad inside, and those tears come to the forefront, and you should embrace that and don't say, don't cry. You say, it's okay to cry. I understand that you're sad. So that validation piece comes in to where they're hearing that you understand that they're coming from a place of sadness. It's very useful to maybe distract them with some sort of music, some sort of reminiscing, some sort of photos to reduce their activity, and do use these props where you can to get yourself through the day, because it becomes very overwhelming for you to be constantly the one that's taking care of everything. So let's talk about our summarization and our conclusion here today. So when you're dealing with somebody with a form of dementia, it's not an easy job, and it does take a village, and you need lots of support, and nobody can do it by themselves. And I'm going to say that again, that nobody can do this alone. The loss of a person's ability to communicate is very frustrating and difficult for people with dementia. It's also more difficult for the people that are taking care of them, which possibly is you, the family member. The positive communication most definitely will ensure that your person with dementia reserves their dignity and their respect and their self-esteem. And your attitude, like I said, your body language is so important in maintaining the right environment to keep your loved one safe and secure, where there is open lines of communication. And knowing the different types of therapies that can help you is very, very important, not just to reduce the anxiety with your loved one that has dementia, but let me tell you, it's important that you know how to communicate your feelings as the caregiver, because you will become anxious and possibly sleepless and overwhelmed. Caregiver burnout is huge for folks that are cognitively fine, that are taking care of a loved one with dementia. And if you're not able to communicate to your family, look, I need help, I'm burnt out, I need respite, or I need you to help me one day a week. If you can't communicate that, you most definitely are going to burn out yourself. And that's not good, because if you burn out, who's going to take care of your loved one with a form of dementia? So just to recap on everything that we've said tonight, your tone of voice, your patience in taking care of somebody and giving them that natural response to respond back to you is super important. Communication is probably the number one issue where a lot of people fall down when we're taking care of folks with dementia. You cannot tell them what to do. You kind of have to encourage. You have to know how to direct. You have to know how to redirect is even more important. And you have to look at their body language, and you have to be very understanding of your body language. Like I had said to you, it's important for you to remember that your tone of voice and your body language have to match, right? And your impatience, we'll say, or your frustrations are going to be magnified because they can see you and they can hear your tone of voice. So you have to keep in mind all of those things. And I know that I've thrown a lot at you tonight, and I hope that you were able to keep notes. But the key to success with anybody that has a form of dementia, no matter what stage they're in, is actually studying the person and looking at their needs, figuring out what their needs are before they need them, and then giving them a chance to communicate with you, however that is. If it's watching, like I said, their body language when they're not able to speak to you anymore, and knowing how to communicate back and forth with them is super, super important. So I'll take any questions if anybody has any. I'm not looking at the chat box, so I'm not sure. Mary.
Hi, Ashley. Hi, I can help you out with that.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aishling. That was very, very interesting. And you touched on some things that I think are real important to remember, especially about being patient.
Oh, that's the big
Yeah.
one.
There is a question in chat. Let me go back to it. The person, loved one, going further back in time is so true. And how is it that they can remember vividly further and further back, yet can't remember what happened 30 minutes ago?
So I'm not sure if the person that's asking that question was on the first series that we did or the second one, but there's a part of your brain that's called the hippocampus. And from the age of 2 to probably the age of 4 to 6, your brain is like a massive big sponge. And that's when most of the learning comes into place. But as you progress from the age of 6 through whatever, 18, 20, you have a lot of emotions and things that happen that are connected to an association. It's called semantic. It's a feeling and it's emotion. Like when you do something for somebody, you feel really happy that you made somebody else feel happy. You remember that moment, like dancing to your first song at your wedding or your first kiss, or feeling that you're in love. Your brain stores those memories in two different departments. One is short-term memory and one is long-term memory. And if it's stored in a long-term memory, that's back in that kind of filing cabinet that's in the hippocampus. And the hippocampus stores all of those long-term memories. So if, for example, I liked Nat King Cole's song, or let's go for Frank Sinatra. Let's go, give me a Frank Sinatra song.
Fly Me to the Moon.
Fly Me to the Moon. There you go. Great song. So just say, for example, that was a song that I danced with my husband with at our wedding, our first dance. When I have my arms around my husband and I'm head over heels in love and we're starting out our life together and we have all of our friends around us and the room is filled with love, every time that Fly Me to the Moon song comes on, guess what I'm going to think about? I'm going to relate to that time where I felt really secure and the support and the love, right? Now, there may be a tear or two as well. You know, that happens sometimes too. But when you have dementia, that memory is stored back in the hippocampus from whatever day it was created. So let's say I'm 84 now and I have dementia and you play that song for me. Even though I can't remember what I did 30 seconds ago, I can remember that because it was stored from years and years ago because it had an emotional connection to it. So I hope that explains your question, but your long-term memory is your filing system that's connected to emotions. And when you have a form of dementia, in this part of your brain, the frontal part of your brain, those connections just aren't connecting anymore, which is why you forget the simple things that you did 30 or 60 seconds ago or the day before. But you do not forget the ones that you felt were important enough to bank in that memory years ago. And as your dementia progresses, your brain goes further and further back, which is why so many people say all the time, I want to go home, take me home, take me home. Even if they're in their home, they're looking for that sense of security that they had when they were footloose and fancy free and surrounded by everybody, and life was easy.
Very good. Aishling, there's a question from, I believe it's Steve, and he asks, can you give some suggestions, resources for a caregiver that is experiencing burnout?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, you need to get help, as in you need to put some sort of a plan in place. And I know it's really, really hard, and it's easy for me to say because I was one of 10. I have 4 children myself, and I hope that if I ever get dementia that they do communicate early on. But I will tell you, see, that you cannot do this alone. And if you're burnt out, that tells me that you're a good communicator because you have recognized that. So I don't know if you're married, I don't know if you have children or if you have neighbors or if you have friends, but you need to reach out and have something put in place where you have some sort of respite. Now, you talk about resources, Seed. I'm not sure where you live, but the plows, which used to be plows, Payless, Lamont, Orland, Worth, Summit Township, they have volunteers attached to their program, Catholic Charities, where I believe folks can come in and can help you. If you can afford a private caregiver to come in, then great. If you have long-term care insurance or the person that you're minding has it, then that covers where you can have somebody come in. Potentially, you may have neighbors that might help, or you may have friends that help. And I know that so many people say, oh yeah, call me if you need me. Well, I challenge you to say, well, I do need you. And can I have you come in every Tuesday for an hour? Or can you come in every Saturday for an hour? Even if it's only a walk, Seed, even if it's maybe just going to the health club, or maybe if it's just going out with your friends to bowl for half an hour, even just for a cup of coffee, you need to have that on a consistent basis because caregiver burnout in what you're doing is huge. Because you're stuck with the person that has dementia all the time and there's no way out for you. So who are you talking to, right? So please do try and find somebody that can help you. And like I said, if you're in this area, do reach out to Plows. It's now called Pathways. It's not called Plows anymore. They changed their name. And you should also call potentially your senior center and see if they can help you. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Aishling. I don't see any other questions right now, but on the topic of burnout, would you recommend a caregiver group if someone can get away and attend
Yes. So we have, as you know, Marilyn, there is a support group on the second Monday of every month at the Orland Fire District at 7:30 till 9. So that's a recurring event, 7:30 to 9 on the second Monday at the Orland Fire District. And we will be working very closely with the Orland Park Library for a fall session where we're going to offer a support group during the day. And we're looking to see if we can potentially have a support group where you'll be able to bring your loved one that has a form of dementia as well, because we know that this is needed in the community and that is also going to be happening. So I want you, whoever asked that question, I'm sorry, I can't see your name, to either call the library or call the Orland Park Fire District, and we will be able to tell you when that session is in place. So we are dementia friendly now. We are trying to put all of these programs in place because we know it's very much needed in the community. And we do have a Facebook page called Orland Park Dementia Friendly Facebook page. You may or may not be on Facebook, and that's okay. We're going to go to the old school. And for now, you absolutely can call the Orland Park Fire Protection District, and they will be able to tell you where these support groups are. But we do understand that it's challenging for folks that are the main caregiver to bring their loved one out at nighttime. And that's why we're going to bring something into the library in the fall, coming soon. And in the meantime, hopefully you'll be able to maybe have a neighbor take care of your loved one and you'll be able to come to the evening one. So I hope that helps.
Great. Thank you, Aishling. Don't see any more questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free to type it in chat or the Q&A box. I'm going to put my email address in chat right now. You can reach me at outreach@orlandparklibrary.org. And if you come up with any questions that you'd like me to pass on to Aishling that you maybe come up with later tonight while you're laying in bed, I could pass them on to her, and she might be able to respond to those, or send you in the right direction, or suggest resources.
And Mary Lynn, can you just tell the folks that are on tonight, what is the official YouTube channel that you guys have at the library, so that they can go back and look at section 1 and 2 and 3, and that we have obviously 3 more coming, so that they can kind of see the whole series?
Right. Yes, you can Google Orland Park Library YouTube channel, and just follow that link, and then you'll come upon our YouTube channel, and you'll see all of the videos that we've recorded. And this one tonight's being recorded, so you'll be able to watch past programs, and also this one will be up probably by Monday or Tuesday of next week. Our marketing department will take it and edit and put it together, and then put it up on the YouTube channel. So just Orland Park Library YouTube channel. It's pretty easy to find. There's lots of videos on there, and you can type in this, the search area. You could just type in dementia, and you'll find the videos that are dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever.
And Mary Lynn, I didn't tell the folks tonight, many people don't know this, the Alzheimer's Association does have a hotline that's 24/7 for people that are primary caregivers that are home the whole entire time by themselves, and they're literally climbing the walls.
Wow.
There is a friendly voice at the end of that phone calling. You'd have to look at the Alzheimer's Association to see what that number is, but that is out there for you. And if you're an Orland Park resident, we do have the Conversations and Coffee at the fire department on the 3rd Thursday of every month. It's not really dementia driven, but just a nice way for you to be able to come out and just meet with other people your own age that maybe might be going through some of the things that you're going through as well, and just socially engage and have a cup of coffee and conversation. And we have great education there as well. So that might be something you might like to do too.
Right. Thank you, Aishling. Any other questions? Don't be shy. We've got a few more minutes. If you want to type in a question or a comment or anything like that in chat, please feel free.
And I have, if you can give out the information at aishlingcare.com. I'm more than happy to address any questions that maybe you have that you don't think of today or down the road. You can contact me anytime. I'm happy to assist in any way, shape, or form. I do have fabulous resources. We have fabulous resources here in the community, but they're no good unless you know about them. So if you don't communicate that you have a need, nobody knows. So contact Mary Lynn, contact the fire department. You can ask for Joni or Betsy. You certainly can contact me at information@aishlingcare.com. I'm happy to address any questions that you have, or come to our support group. I hope that you found this not too overwhelming. And as I always say, go back and look at this tomorrow and or next week, and you'll hear things that you didn't hear before. That'll help you navigate through this journey, and hopefully you'll find a good support system to help you, because it is tough.
It is. Well, thank you again, Aishling. I don't see any more questions, so I think we can say good night to everyone, and thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again. And again, you can check the YouTube channel early next week, and you'll find this particular recording.
Have a great
Good night,
weekend.
everyone.
Thank you so much, Mary Lynn.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Aishling. Bye-bye.